Yeah, I don't know if a study's been conducted on the percentage that were right turn versus just driving straight through the intersection, to be honest with you, particularly at these intersections.
But are the more serious accidents the ones that result from straight through as opposed to turns?
I'd only be surmising, Deputy Mayor, but I would say that generally people are driving faster when they're going straight through than turning right.
Yeah, the thing I could add is usually if there's pedestrians involved, that's where the right turn on red is more, potentially dangerous to pedestrians at those corners. So generally, what I've seen is they try to beat the car coming from the other side of the intersection because the intersection is so large. So they're looking to their left, seeing that they have an opportunity to make that right, and they don't necessarily look to the right to see if there's a pedestrian crossing. So at El Camino and Encinitas, we have quite a few pedestrians that cross there. That's one of the heart of the city. And El Camino and Olivenheim, we may not have as many, but we don't have the right turn red there. We just have the left turn.
All right, thank you very much. We have, I think, exhausted this conversation. Is there any specific direction that council would like to give to staff on this item? If not, thank you very much. And we appreciate the information on that program. So we are going to take a break. We started at 5 tonight, so we're a little hour ahead of you on how long we've been sitting. So we're going to take a break until 8 o'clock, and then we will move on to item 6, which is presentation and update on downtown alcohol issues. Thank you. Which is the presentation and update on downtown alcohol issues. So if we could all, I'm missing one council member. And here we go. All right. Thank you very much.
Jody, you.
And this presentation, I believe, is Deputy City Manager Richard Phillips.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. I'm Richard Phillips from the City's Manager's Office, and we've had some introductions earlier, but though this is a joint presentation this evening. Of course, to my right is Captain Haley, Encinitas Sheriff's Captain. We'll have Dodie Crawford, she's Executive Director of DEMA, doing a section of the presentation, and then Jeff Murphy, the Planning and Building Director for the city. So just as a brief background, Council requested a review of issues related to citizens' concerns and complaints regarding at the May 16, 2012 meeting regarding late-night nuisances, crime, and other issues which were purported to be related to serving and selling of alcoholic beverages in the downtown area. So really the purpose of this evening's council agenda report or this presentation is to update the council on some stakeholder meetings that were held, steps taken, enforcement activities, presentation overview of the city's permitting process, as well as the ABC, or it's the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control's role in licensing alcohol serving establishments, as well as some local permitting options for discussion and council consideration. So here's the outline of the presentation this evening. The city requested DEMA to facilitate stakeholder meetings to help identify issues, work with the parties to implement some actions that we could take basically right away, and then make recommendations for potential review or action. DEMA's Executive Director, Dodie Crawford, will be reviewing these topics in this presentation. During the period, targeted alcohol-related enforcement and prevention activities were conducted by the Sheriff's Department. This is in conjunction with the ABC or ABC related or sponsored programs, as well as some self-initiated things by our own Sheriff's Department. And Captain Haley will be reviewing these statistics, particularly calls for service for certain establishments, DUI arrests, and special enforcement activities. The city does have a responsible beverage service and sales ordinance. I'll do a review of a slide on that when it was implemented and exactly what that does. And then Planning and Building Director, Mr. Murphy, will be reviewing the city's local permitting process for alcohol-related establishments and the state alcohol beverage, or ABC's licensing role, and to then present some local permitting options. Now, I will note that we did invite an ABC representative to attend the meeting this evening. He was not able to make it this evening, but he was provided these slides and provided additional information to staff. So with that overview, I'd like to introduce Dodie Crawford. She's Executive Director of Downtown Encinitas Main Street, which we refer to as DEMA, and kick it off.
Good morning, Mayor Barth and City Council. Last year, DEMA was asked to facilitate meetings to get a better understanding of the concerns voiced to the City Council by downtown residents regarding the downtown nightlife issues and its impact to the area. We met on June 7th, June 26th, July 17th, and then had some various smaller working groups throughout the year. Those attending included DEMA board members, downtown restaurant owners and managers, representatives from the Self-Realization Fellowship, business owners, the Encinitas Citizens Committee, other residents, representatives from the San Diego Alliance for Drug-Free Youth and the California Alcohol Beverage Control, Sheriff's Department, and city staff. Residents were troubled by disturbances they wanted cured. They said that at night they were bothered by noise, public drunkenness, lewd behavior, vandalism, reckless driving, and illegal parking. Often in the morning, they would have to deal with litter, urination, vomit on the sidewalks and in the planters. Another big problem was party buses that sat idling in neighborhoods as they waited for their passengers. The residents were concerned about any increase in the number of alcohol serving outlets downtown, as they felt that the restaurants and bars might be the major cause of most issues. What has been noted is that over the years, the business model for restaurants has transitioned from primarily food service, where alcohol service is secondary, to the dining experience, to restaurants that are more like social hubs, offering food, drink, along with entertainment such as sports television. There had been increases in the size of some restaurants also. Morphing of restaurants into bars in later hours of the night also concerned residents. With the success of our downtown establishments came increased impacts to downtown, especially in the southern end of town. Restaurant owners described the methods they use to minimize any problems. They're careful to adhere to the terms of their permits, but some had not heard directly from the residents of their concerns. The biggest problem in all this was a lack of communication among the stakeholders. In many instances, the 2012 discussions were the first opportunity for businesses and residents to actually meet and talk to each other. We discussed the general coarsening of our culture, which contributes greatly to the rude and disrespectful nature of some visitors, regardless of alcohol, and that not all problems could be directly attributed to the restaurants. In the discussions, we found a general concern about how the Department of Alcohol Beverage Control issues licenses and what it can and can't do. There was a concern about the city's role in the permitting process. We also talked about the different types of alcohol licenses. In downtown Encinitas, we now have 29 on-premise alcohol licenses, whereas in 2008 there were 26. Right now, there's one Veterans Club, 2 bars with no food service, 13 restaurants with beer, wine, and spirits, and 13 restaurants with beer and wine only. We have 1 business selling beer and wine for off-site consumption, and 3 stores selling beer, wine, and spirits for take-home. In order to address the issues, we established a smaller working group. Direct communication between alcohol-serving restaurants and neighbors was encouraged and did increase. Problems related to owners and managers could then be addressed immediately. Complaint call-ins to the Sheriff's Dispatch were encouraged. The Sheriff's Department stepped up law enforcement activities. In addition, the working group provided some direction to community volunteer Bill Weedman, who has drafted a new ordinance proposal. Restaurants ask patrons to be respectful and quiet when leaving their premises. Restaurant employees are patrolling surrounding outdoor areas throughout the night and maintaining noise and incident logs. They also have increased security, especially on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The working group recommends that lines of communication remain clear and open between the community and alcohol-serving restaurants management. Direct communication between SRF and Union Kitchen and Tap has helped alleviate many problems. Union has been very responsive when they are notified of any problems by SRF. The same is true of the relationship between D Street Bar and Grill and the La Paloma. The restaurants really do want to be good neighbors. They just need to be informed as soon as possible when a problem arises. The working group has recommended a neighborhood watch be initiated by residents. It has proven an effective tool in the northern end of town where there have long been problems with drugs, alcohol, fights, graffiti, vagrants, and noise. That neighborhood watch includes residents and businesses working together with the sheriff to prevent crime. The working group encourages the use of already existing tools. First, it's very important to report all suspicious activities to the sheriff. They can't determine any hot spots unless they're called. Alcohol violations need to be reported to the ABC. Code enforcement can be called for noise violations. And restaurants and bars should have an operation and security plan that will help alleviate any disturbances for nearby neighbors. The group would finally recommend an increased sheriff's presence downtown and a continuation of the coastal enforcement team. There are additional tools to investigate, such as land use, permitting changes for restaurants, serving alcohol in late-night hours, reviewing legislative options used by other cities, buffer zones between commercial and residential areas, parking restrictions, and the prohibition of idling party buses. You'll hear more about them tonight. DEMA's aim was to exhaust all existing tools before moving on to other means. We recognize that the residents and the Self-Realization Fellowship want the safe and peaceful enjoyment of their properties. We also recognize that our coastal corridor is a popular destination because of the success of our businesses. We all share downtown together and have all helped to shape it into what is arguably the finest coastal town in North County. As such, we should all participate in the solutions to these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Turn it over to Pat.
Good evening again. Just before I get to the first slide, obviously this is an issue for law enforcement, but it's an issue throughout the city. It's not unique to the area where these restaurants and bars are, although that's a significant concern. I review all our use of force reports. Is it not on?
No, just pull it up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I review all of our use of force reports, and a significant number of them are alcohol related. People do not cooperate with us when they've been drinking. Oddly enough, I'm driving to work this morning at 7 a.m. and I heard somebody, I won't say the address, was under the influence of alcohol and was having a problem with a neighbor at 7 a.m. In our city, so it's not unique. Let's see. Statistical data is a little difficult to obtain and quantify, particularly when given that increased enforcement activities create increased statistics. I mean, it's just a given, right? So something we use to get a better picture is how many calls for service we respond to at each of the establishments, and that kind of gives us an idea. That's not proactive stuff we're doing, which we do a lot of, and I'll get into that. These are calls for service. And we took a 5-year sample. Obviously, we're only partway through 2013, but if you total these up, these are the top 10, and not all of these have gone up. Some have gone down. It's very interesting if you look at the numbers. But in total is 183, and it went to 210, which is an increase of about 13%. Our responses. These slides were created last year in preparation for the meeting. It kind of gives you an idea of between 2011 and 2012, the driving under the influence cases, the arrests that we made. It gives you an idea of the numbers in comparison to Del Mar and Solana Beach. We do get more enforcement in Encinitas. You have more traffic deputies. That's natural. One of your deputies that works here is number one in the county consistently. Several weeks ago, we attended a MAD award ceremony in Sacramento where he was the top award winner there also. And a lot of that's on the deputies, incredibly hardworking. But this gives you an idea of where the driving under the influence arrests are made with this map. And it gives an indication 564 DUI arrests were made in the city in 2011. 2012, this only goes through August. Because it was in preparation for the meeting. I will tell you the total arrests were 363 in 2012, which is significantly less, but we had less enforcement. Again, more enforcement creates more statistics. We moved some deputies. One deputy was on military leave. That was a traffic deputy, so he was not doing enforcement that he had done the year before. This was prepared to get an idea because the impression was that a significant number of people were coming from other areas. You hear PB North and some other phrases used that I've heard in the short time I've been here. And this gives a breakdown of where people live. That was 2011. This is 2012. Again, it's through August. And the residents in Encinitas that we arrested went up a little bit, 4%. 2011, and again, this is difficult to quantify exactly. We question people, where were you drinking when we arrest them for driving under the influence? They can tell us the truth, or they can make something up, or they can not answer at all. But this is the information that we were given from the people that we arrested in 2011, where they had been drinking. And in 2012, we have the top 6, and again, that's only through August. This was done to publicize to people that taking a cab is the way to go. We kind of started this program. The prior captain here, Sherry Sorrow, pretty forward-thinking, saying that if you look at this, a significant amount of people live within a range where they can pay $18 for a cab versus spending thousands and thousands of dollars for a driving under the influence case. That's if you don't hit somebody and injure them, which is a whole other concern. Some of the enforcement activities we've done, and we do a bunch of them. You have community-oriented policing deputies. There is grant money available from the ABC. There's an Avoid the 14 grant, the 14 of the law enforcement agencies in the county. We do saturation patrols. We do patrols where we go out and we look for people that are drunk in public, which is what really affects neighborhoods, when people are out there yelling and screaming, urinating and doing other things. They can't care for themselves appropriately. We do those. We've done a number of them. We do DUI checkpoints. Those are less effective, and I will tell you why, with social media and texting. When we put a DUI checkpoint up within an hour, it's amazing how many cabs are driving through after the first hour that we're not there in the first hour. But we still do it. It's part of the grant money, and it encourages people that, hey, I took a cab, it cost me $18. Next time I go out drinking, I can do the same thing and not put people at risk. And we continue to do that. Last summer we had a coastal enforcement team. We pulled them from patrol to increase our activities in the summertime, not just related to alcohol, but theft-related things and the amount of people that are the increases that are seen in the city here, because people come to the beach and attend a number of events that occur, obviously in the summer more than the rest of the year. This year we have a crime suppression team. They're out every Friday and Saturday night now, working primarily in the bar areas, and they do a lot of operations there. We work in concert with ABC, our community-oriented policing deputies, a number of operations, some in uniform, some not in uniform. We do operations where we inspect the bars when they're not in operation to make sure that they're following all the rules. The guards have appropriate cards, for example, if they're working their security, that they're checking IDs appropriately, a number of things. There's a whole list that we go on. It's called an impact inspection. We do those often. And again, Friday and Saturday nights are big nights where we have a lot of people out. And that's the next one. A couple of things. I had some notes that are not on the slides. One of the problem bars in the past was the Leucadian, I will tell you that, through a number of operations that we conducted there and also complaints from citizens that lived in the city. ABC came out, and it's a pretty lengthy process. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of commitment. I know their hours have been cut significantly. They're essentially, it's significantly affected their business, I will tell you that, and we have not had too many problems there since. We had an issue a while back with the saloon. Our deputies responded to a call there. The sergeant on duty got to the scene and noticed that it was unsafe for deputies to enter. The business was authorized for 98 people. There were in excess of 300 people in there. If you've ever been in the saloon, it's not big. That caused great concern to me. My two lieutenants and I, we went out and met with the business owner. Since then, he's made some significant changes, including changing his security director and doing a number of other things. And in that same vein, we're going to be proactive. There are, I believe, 34 establishments down there. We're going to personally visit every one We're going to talk to each of the proprietors about how to effectively conduct business so as not to negatively impact the community, and also law enforcement and the response that we're going to do routine inspections. Before, we were a little bit reactive in that we would get calls to these bars at 12 or 1 at night. Usually it's an assault or something else of that nature. Now we're starting our bar inspections at 8 or 9 at night. We don't wait till 12 or 1 at night. We go through early. For example, if we go in a business and it says 98 people are authorized, and we do a count and go, there's 120, we tell the proprietor, it's 9 o'clock at night, you're already at 120. The next time we're coming back, it's going to be with the fire marshal. Citations are going to occur, and it's going to start costing you money. So we're much more proactive than we used to be. We realize it's a significant issue there. I get a number of calls, a number of emails about what's going on down there, and we're giving it as much attention as possible. So with that.
Thank you, Captain. I'll just briefly review. The city does have what they call a responsible beverage service and sales training that was instituted early in 2010. It's affectionately known as RBSS, or sometimes programs are known as RBS. This ordinance requires the completion of a certified training program by all servers and sellers of alcohol, including the managers, key personnel, or anyone that serves or sells alcohol in this entire city. The training is provided either by the ABC, which they have a program called LEAD, or there's a joint program, which we're grateful the San Diego for Drug-Free Youth coordinates with this city, the city of Del Mar, and Solana Beach to offer training opportunities in order for these servers and establishments to have this ordinance, to be compliant with the ordinance. Now, the ordinance requires that the establishments have verification on site and asked available for viewing by peace officers. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Murphy, Planning and Building Director.
Good evening. The remaining portion of the presentation will focus on the permitting process for alcohol serving establishments, as there may be some confusion between how the city regulates these type of businesses and how ABC does. We'll also provide some options for regulatory process and code changes that are available should the council want to do something more than what we currently do today. Starting with the city regulations, new bars that serve wine and beer or wine, beer, and distilled spirits are generally required to secure a major use permit. Now, a major use permit requires certain findings to be made before it can be approved, such as compatibility findings, which ensures that the business is compatible with the surrounding character and any existing land uses. Now, under a use permit, if there are impacts that frustrate our ability to make those findings, the city can condition the business to mitigate those adverse impacts, such as limiting operating hours or limiting the hours windows can be left open. A major use permit is a planning commission decision that is appealable to the city council. Now, new or expanding alcohol serving restaurants are also required to obtain a discretionary permit, in this case a minor use permit. Similar to a major use permit, a minor use permit requires that compatibility findings be made prior to approval, and the city can regulate operations to address and mitigate adverse impacts through the conditioning. Now, minor use permits are directors' decisions, but if there is a concern raised by the public on a particular application, the director can defer the decision to the planning commission. The director's decision or the planning commission decision is appealable to the city council. Now, what is important to note is that the city already has a lot of control over the permitting of new and expanding bars and restaurants. The city can apply conditions to address potential impacts, and if the conditions are not acceptable to the applicant, the city can deny the permit. Now, what the city does not require is a discretionary permit for license transfers. This occurs when one restaurant is simply replaced. There's no expansion with another restaurant. These are more changes in business and not a change in land use. For these, interior improvements require building permits, while exterior permits typically require a design review permit, and in some cases a coastal development permit. Now, as mentioned, I understand that ABC was not available to attend tonight, so I'll try to explain their permitting process based on the comments that they provided us. But basically, ABC follows the city's lead for all new bars and restaurants or changes in license type. For example, Angelo's downtown, they have a liquor license application from ABC in their window. They will not issue that license until Angelo's gets a permit from us, in case a use permit from us. And my understanding, Angelo's hasn't actually submitted yet. Now, similar to the city, ABC cannot add conditions to an existing license transfer. They can only adjust the conditions if they're specifically requested by the property owner or the applicant. Now, while there are a number of existing tools available, there are some options that can further regulate this type of land use type. Possible legislative changes that could be done in the short term include these here. Given the concerns raised by alcohol-serving restaurants, a determination can be made that all minor use permit applications that involve alcohol-serving businesses be referred to the Planning Commission instead of being director's decision. Another option is to require that applicants submit what is being called an operation management plan. This plan will better help define exactly what and how a business is going to operate and their impacts to surrounding land uses. Now, based on this information, we can better understand and therefore condition the permit to help mitigate those impacts. Since this plan will be part of the use permit approval, any deviation from the plan or the permit conditions are subject to enforcement up to and including revocation of the permit. Medium-term changes will take a little bit more time because they actually involve code amendments. One option is to codify those operational management plans that I just mentioned, so it's more than just a policy, it's part of the regulations, gives a little more enforcement teeth. Another option is to treat alcohol uses that require a major use permit similar to the process for general plan amendments, where they are referred to the Planning Commission for a recommendation and then come to the City Council for decision. Yet another option is to limit the hours of operation for all alcohol-serving restaurants unless they process a major use permit, which can include the aforementioned operational business plan. Now, these changes talked about so far only apply to new or expanding operation. But again, it's worth noting that discretionary permits already required for these type of use businesses that give the city a lot of control in whether to approve, conditionally approve, like limiting the hours of operation, or even denying a permit. Now, a possible option to consider for existing facilities or those license transfers is what is being called deemed approved status. What the deemed approved status, this is an overview here, again applies to the existing bars or restaurants that serve late hour alcohol. There's standards that are established. These are just three of of many that San Luis Obispo already has this program in place. But basically, it states that the use does not result in any health or safety impacts. That the facility is maintained, so there's no adverse effect on the community. Next slide. The standards will be posted in front of a window, so all patrons will be able to see them. All facilities are automatically deemed to have approved status. It's assumed they already operate under these guidelines. Upon receipt of a legitimate complaint, a public hearing is heard, and depending on the number and the significance of the infraction, the deemed approved status could be revoked. The bar or the restaurant could be enrolled in some type of performance plan. There's fines that can be imposed, and also possible injunction on the restaurant. There's some challenge associated with this program that will require investigation should the council want to pursue this. For example, this program will require additional resources and costs for functions such as enforcement, outreach, training, inspections. Our understanding, San Luis Obispo, which this again program is based on, has a dedicated staff person 100% of the time that operates in this program. Now, while a lot of discussion has been focused on the downtown area, this program, as well as all the previous changes that are being proposed, are citywide. They just don't focus on the downtown area. While this type of program has been challenged in other jurisdictions, as we understand, this is something we still would like to discuss more with our legal counsel to find out the risks and impacts associated if we, again, implement this program here. We also need to consider measurable performance standards or thresholds that everyone understands in determining when a business is out of compliance with these performance standards. And lastly, there is a perception that this type of program penalizes the folks that do it right, that are good neighbors. This is not a program that can be quickly adopted. In the case of San Luis Obispo, we understand that they took 3 years in developing their program, working a lot with the business community, with the residents, and with their council. Also, there are roughly 12 other jurisdictions that we identified that have adopted similar but different programs that should be analyzed if the council wants to go this direction. Again, if the council directs us, we would like, if the council wants us to consider this type of program, staff would like the direction to research these other programs, work with our legal counsel, community, business owners, and develop options that can be considered, all with anticipated costs and resource needs.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Basically, the recommendation, we do have quite a few public speakers. I think I got some quickie training. Several of them have some PowerPoint presentations they'd like to share with the council as well. So our recommendation is to receive this information, hear the public testimony, and direct any options that council wishes us to investigate.
Thank you. Are there any preliminary council questions? If not, public speakers, please.
So we have a total of 19 with several time donations. The first speaker, I'm not even going to try and say her name, is from Self-Realization Fellowship. Yes. Followed by Brian Galino, who has 2 time donations. Dana Galino, are you here? Oh, okay. Dana and Jasmine. Thank you. And then followed by Tim Calver with a time donation by Carrie Calver. Carrie, are you here? Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I am Brother Parameshwarananda, and no offense taken. I get it all the time, and I'm with Self-Realization Fellowship. The fellowship has properties at 215 K Street, 1105 2nd Street, and 939 2nd Street, where sanctuaries of various types have been set aside for those who want a quiet place to withdraw from the business around and connect to an inner quietude. For many years, the environment around these sanctuaries allowed their undisturbed use, and as far as we know, it all worked out for everyone. But there is a problem now. Due to the proliferation of bars in the downtown area, some of these sanctuaries are being compromised on a regular basis. And as stated publicly in this chamber over a year ago, we are concerned that it will only get worse going forward unless effective steps are taken. The Encinitas general plan allows for mixed uses of property. So we have religious use, residences, businesses, office space, restaurants, and bars, all pretty close together. We have no issue with this arrangement, and it worked for years. But someone must ensure that there is a balance between these uses that allows them to coexist without interfering with each other. And that hasn't been happening lately. The bars have been proliferating. They're called restaurants, but they're really bars. And this hasn't been regulated. They are now interfering with the other uses. In the past, the city has looked to the ABC for alcohol regulation, but they will not be able to solve the proliferation problem we have now. They don't have the budget, and they don't have the staff for it. Self-regulation of the bars was suggested. It's a nice idea. We wanted it to work, and we tried it. It helped a little. The staff has been wonderful. If we only had to deal with the staffs, we wouldn't have a problem. The problem is the patrons. While there has been some improvement, it's not enough to address the fundamental problem. So it's up to the City Council to take the measures necessary to strike a proper balance. We believe legislation is a reasonable solution, and we have reviewed the proposed legislation in the staff report you have before you, including the temporary moratorium that would be in place during the enactment process, and we believe it's reasonable. We strongly urge the Council to consider it. Thank you for your time.
My name is Brian Galino. I moved to Encinitas 23 years ago from Pacific Beach. And I moved from Pacific Beach because at that time a few restaurant owners wanted to make a lot of money selling alcohol to college kids. I endured drunk drivers, petty crime, public urination, some of the things you've heard here, until I got tired of it, and then I moved to Encinitas. Encinitas was most like the laid-back beach town that PB used to be. Now, in the succeeding years after I left PB, it's endured MTV Spring Break, riots on the beach, a steep increase in crime, and the number of bars and drunk college students has tripled. Encinitas, up till now, has stayed pretty much the same. This is changing rapidly. What concerns me is both what's going on right now and that when you go into Encinitas on a weekend, you not only see crowded bars, you see lines outside of crowded bars. So what we have here is an opportunity for other bar owners to make more money. Okay? So it's not enough just to regulate the businesses that we have. You're going to be facing a constant pressure to have more of these businesses. That's what happened in Pacific Beach. Okay? It happened very quickly. The residents in Pacific Beach didn't want it to happen. Okay? But they tried various things to regulate what was happening, and none of them worked. Okay? Now, we're our own city. Pacific Beach is a small part of a larger city, so perhaps we have a lot more autonomy. But we have those same commercial pressures, and we have the same amount of restaurant and bar licenses that they have in PB. It's striking. You can get on the ABC, the Alcohol Control Board website, and it shows you the licenses, okay? And if you look at the little dots, which represent all the liquor licenses, Encinitas, downtown Encinitas, 101, and looks like Garnet Avenue in Pacific Beach. We have the same number of licenses, okay? And we are going to be under the same pressure for those people to open the same sort of establishments that you have in PB. Okay? We do not have a shortage of people between 20 and 30 who want to drink. Okay? They'll fill those places. Okay. What can I add to this? My objection to this is kind of aesthetic, okay? I mean, I don't like walking around with a bunch of drunk people, okay? But I am old. I can go other places, okay? What I'm also concerned about is that this is toxic to our kids, okay? We have one movie theater in Encinitas, okay? It's on 101. It's next to one of these bars that the officer was talking about, okay? We have fire rings, okay? Downtown Encinitas is where your teenagers go, all right? Okay, Ms. Gasper, I think your kids are young, okay? Okay, when they're teenagers, they're going to be saying to you, I want to sleep over at Brittany's house, okay? Before they get to Brittany's house, they're going to be meeting some cute surfer down at the fire rings. Okay? No, not me. Yeah, this is what it's like. This is what happens. You know, I mean, you're going to have, they're going, you know, I want to see Rocky Horror Picture Show. You can't see Rocky Horror. Mom. This is what you get, okay? Okay. We're going to have a combination of teenagers, drunks, and police, all in the same area. This is not a good thing, okay? Okay. I mean, it's not good for our kids. And, you know, I mean, yeah, we would love it if our kids went to the youth community center at the YMCA. But that's not where they go, okay? Now, can we do anything about this? I'm not sure. I mean, the number that I'm looking at is the number of bar stools. I've been working with a lady here, Lori Baum, and among other things, we've counted the number of people who can be sold liquor. I mean, in other words, we've added up the capacity of the bars that are local to here, okay? Now, in a 9-block area here, on a Friday night, we can be selling booze to 1,500 people legally, okay? That's up from like 800 or 900 people 3 years ago, okay? Now, you know, we heard a lot of numbers from different people. That's the number that I would be watching, okay? Because, like, 6 months from now, do you want that 1,500 to go up? Do you want it to go down? Do you want it to stay the same? Okay? In PB, it went up rapidly, okay? It's very likely to go up rapidly here, okay? I would like it to go down, okay? Thanks.
Tim Calver, followed by Roseanne Bazanel, followed by Lori Baum with time donation by David Lakin. Are you here? Yes, I am. And also Ann Schechter. Ann, are you here? Thank you.
Tim Calver, Leucadia. First off, you guys are the people I voted for, so there's a lot of faith there. I came here years ago for some existing issues in 2005, 2006, 2007, and I feel that my issues fell on deaf ears. I feel this is a competent city council, and I believe you can solve these issues. I really do. So you're here to guide us, protect us, make sure rules are abided by, and also be fair to the citizens, the residents, and the businesses too, which is fine. So I live in Leucadia, approximately 20 feet away from a pizza place, recently approved for beer and wine. My front door faces the back of a bar window. I'm not even too sure how that even got approved to begin with. If you lovely people are in my front yard right now, and you're hanging out with me and my 13-year-old daughter, these wonderful people in this back room here would be the people up in the bar that we get to look at now. Interesting. So we've had existing problems before. Like I said, I came in here in 2005, 6, 7, and then I kind of stopped coming because I didn't like the city council too much. But here I am again. to now discuss matters. The problems we had beforehand included flooding in our area, in the parking areas, the streets, and even a couple homes. There was no lighting back in this time, 2005, 6, and 7. Transients in the alleyway, the streets, the underground parking area, they're sleeping. Public urination, and not just transients there either. Noise level from people yelling, screaming in the parking areas. Drug use activities, sales. Lack of parking, people parking in my driveway. Loading, unloading in the street. Traffic, speeding, using the street as a cut-through. Smoking, cigarette butts, and handicapped people having a hard time in general kind of getting around. So those were existing problems. And now we have them, they've increased. So let's go through that same list again and see what we got. Flooding, still not fixed. Now we've got what? Drunk people possibly going to go get in a car, try and get themselves out if it starts raining real badly while the car is stranded. There's still no lighting. We've had 2 of my cars now hit because lighting back there is terrible. Transients, well, let's just go with this one. One died in the restaurant. Not in the restaurant, down below, okay? In the parking area last Friday night, all right? Not enough bathrooms in the restaurant area. There's 1 bathroom for men, 1 for women. It's separate with a closed door. Can't get any more than 1 person at a time. So these people are now using my planter boxes as their bathrooms. It's not very nice when I go outside and say, can you please not do that? And then they offer to fight me. You know, noise levels increased dramatically. I got a window of people making comments. Go out on a Friday night, go out to my driveway. Hey, happy Friday. You get the picture. I got people smoking weed within 20 feet of my house. 13-year-old daughter right there. People now parking in my driveway more so. Hey, I thought I could park here. Of course you did. You're drunk. More trucks are now unloading and blocking in me and my tenants. That's not good. And, of course, increased traffic. Not just increased traffic, but we've got increased drunk traffic. And basically, if I got my driveway, I'm 10 feet away from now basically a smoking break area from the back of the restaurant. Could be from the patrons who can't smoke inside the place, so it's best for them to come around the back and have all that cigarette smoke come on my property. And, of course, going back to the handicap, they're now even more at risk. So this is what happens when beer, wine licenses are allowed without proper research. You guys are going to do what you're going to do. But let's look into some research here and see what we can do to get things fixed. Yeah, I have tried to communicate, by the way, with the owners of the restaurant. One seems to just run away from me constantly, and the other one does not reply to my emails. I talked to the property manager, or the property owner really, and the restaurant owners. None of them are really that interested in working with me. I don't know why. Encinitas, it's a great community. It's a yoga community, a beach community. There's ways of making money besides liquor licenses. I mean, I'm more than happy. I don't even ride a bike that much, but I'm more than happy to pay $10 to ride on the bike lane every year. And I think if everyone did that, that's a lot of revenue right there that we're missing out on. Just a suggestion. But I feel like we're getting like Pacific Beach here, like someone said earlier on. And when I moved here, there were barely any taxis here at all. I couldn't even find a taxi when I moved to Encinitas. They're everywhere now. So that tells us that we're kind of becoming a big drinking area. And it's great for people who live away from the 101. They're not within a mile or 2. But if you are, and there's a lot of us on the 101, things are becoming no longer fair. And that's what your job is, to make sure that things are fair for the citizens and the residents. So let's make sure we thank you. Let's make sure we follow our own rules and make things fair for people. And let's ask our community what they want before we keep building and building these bars. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carver? Excuse me, Mr. Carver? Mr. Carver, do you live by Leucadia Roadside Park?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Roseanne?
My name is Roseanne Bazinet, and I own a property on 222 West J Street. I'm impacted regularly by the Union Bar. A couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, a couple weeks ago, I went to the public comments at the new restaurant that's going to be open, this little lobster restaurant down next to the Lotus Cafe. And I was the only one that showed up. And they were the nicest family opening up a restaurant. I felt this was a wonderful place that I might like to go to, even though I don't really eat lobster. But they were going to have salads and other things. And it just was like a deja vu thinking back when I went to the meetings on the Union Bar, which is not in character, actually, with our downtown at all, and how we were told as citizens that they were going to have a restaurant with a bar, when all of us knew it was going to be a bar with a restaurant. And we queried them repeatedly, and they said no. But we knew it would be a bar with a restaurant. So what I have faced living on J Street is, and walking my dogs past the Union Bar, which absolutely stinks. It reeks of stale beer. It's not safe to walk down there. I've had men come out of the Union Bar with their girlfriends and basically urinate in the SRF parking lot right in front of me and just say, well, I had to go. I've had people drop their litter. The section across the street where it's just dirt has quite a bit of broken glass in it. I don't see anybody coming to pick it up except me. And I find that the Union Bar is really not in character with the neighborhood. None of us like it. Even they may work with us, but it's people come, young people come on those party buses, and when they're dropped off, they're already drunk. I've gone up to the buses and spoken with people who tell me they're undercover, they're off-duty police officers, but the police have told me police officers can't do that kind of work. So the man was lying to me. And I specifically said to him, you round up those people, I'm calling the police right now. And he began to round them up. But they were already drunk before they stepped, when they stepped out of that bus. And they're black buses. They don't even have the guts to put what it is on the bus. They're just dark black buses coming into our neighborhood, spewing out smoke that they don't turn off their buses. And so it's dirty, it smells. People are foul-mouthed. I was walking past that, I think it's the lumberyard, going to get ice cream at Bubby's, and a family was going to get dinner, and I was listening to men with foul mouths talking outside the bar. And I'm thinking, we don't have to have those kind of establishments. Put the party bars somewhere else. Why can't we just have nice restaurants that may have serve beer and wine with their meals? That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Lori Baum, followed by Martin Schechter, followed by John Balow.
We have a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes. Okay. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, City Manager, and City Attorney. I'm Lori Baum, a 17-year resident of Encinitas who lives and works downtown. We realize you've faced a number of challenging issues in recent months, and we appreciate how much thought and attention you have given to making the best decisions. Thank you for all you're doing. We'd also like to thank the Sheriff for the efforts you're making to protect our neighborhoods. And we also are pleased to hear the options that are being proposed by the city, by Jeff Murphy, tonight in terms of actions that may be taken. And what I'm here tonight is to say that we've waited a year and we would really like the action to come as soon as possible. Things are changing quickly, here, for example, and downtown isn't the way it used to be. What we're concerned about is the increase in the number of late-night bars from 4 in 2007 to 10 this year and soon to be 11 in our downtown business district. And this is having a serious negative impact on life for those of us who live downtown and the businesses downtown, and is a contributor to the 22% increase in crime last year. So here, this is the number of bars that we had in 2007, and it shows the increase. And the dotted line is a trend line that shows the direction that we're going to go if we keep going at the rate we have been going. So we're not against a moderate number of drinking establishments as long as they respect the peace of our neighborhood. We respect the right of businesses to make a living, but no one has a right to conduct their business in a way that inflicts harm on others, which is what is happening downtown. Some city officials may say that businesses should not be regulated or that they are too hard to regulate, yet any time a person or a business disturbs the peace anywhere in the city, not just downtown, the city has a responsibility to regulate to protect the rights of everyone, the businesses, the visitors, and the residents as well. So when I first came to speak to you a year ago, we were concerned about public disturbances caused by patrons of the bars, such as noise, litter, vandalism, and public urination. Since that time, the problems have escalated. We have found people passed out in their cars next to a pool of vomit and passed out on the sidewalk on 2nd Street between J and K. We've also found drug packages, sexual paraphernalia, and numerous articles of clothing discarded along 3rd Street. Most importantly, someone has died this year due to overconsumption of alcohol along the coast. The individual was a single mother of 2 young children, killed when she ran into oncoming traffic after drinking in a bar on 101. Now, I personally know a friend of hers, and it has been a terrible tragedy. And another example of what's becoming more commonplace, a young woman who allegedly was drinking ran her car into a park off San Elijo Avenue, causing $5,000 in damage. So what we're concerned about is that innocent bystanders are being subject to the risk of being hit by drunk drivers. So we'd like to the city to take action to reduce the amount of drinking going on, either if it's limiting the hours of the bars or limiting the numbers. So we're looking for the leadership on this life and death matter before the situation becomes worse. So this, let me explain about how the number of drinking establishments has morphed over the years. And in 2007, there were 4 bars open past midnight. In 2008, we had 5 when Meritage became Third Corner. In 2009, we had 7 bars when Pino's became the Lumberyard Tavern, and Olio's Pizza became Luxus, which later became the Encinitas Ale House. In 2011, we then had 9 bars when Solace opened in the Pacific Station, and When in Rome became Union Kitchen and Tap. Beachside Bar also expanded that year. This year we have 10 late-night bars now that Barracuda has become the Beer Garden, and the Daily Double is doubling its capacity, adding another bar adjacent to the original site. So without city intervention, the number has the potential to triple yet again, as there are more than 30 establishments downtown with pending or existing beer and wine or liquor licenses. In fact, 5 restaurants along the coast have either converted to bars or applied for beer and wine licenses in the first 6 months of this year alone, showing the acceleration of the trend. And there are 10 alcohol license applications pending in Encinitas. If granted, that would mean a 10% increase in the 100 alcohol licenses we already have citywide. So in this, it's a trend that's accelerating very quickly. So what can we do? Some of the options have been explored tonight. Later, some speakers will be going into more detail. In Coronado, for example, they have a fixed retail to restaurant ratio that would help to keep the balance before it tips. So we ask that all these options be studied and implemented, and we look forward to hearing about the progress on that. The increase in drinking establishments has economic costs as well, as the health and safety costs that we've talked about. According to the Woodstock Institute, which studies alcohol policy, the proliferation of alcohol outlets is both a symptom of economic decline and a factor that worsens the decline. The upward spiral in the number of people drinking downtown creates a disincentive for businesses seeking a clean, safe environment. Furthermore, tax revenues produced by bars cover only 5% of the city's cost of policing these bars, so the city is ending up paying for the bars to operate. Let's look at the problem in another way. This is the number of bar seats available downtown. In 2007, there were fewer than 500 bar seats. You can see at the beginning of the graph. Today, there are nearly 1,500 bar seats, more than triple of only 6 years ago. This means there are more than 200 people potentially drinking on every block. Then add to this those waiting in line to get into the bars and those partying in the streets. Could the police really control this? There could be even more than 1,500 people drinking downtown on weekend nights. I recently checked with the bars along 101 and found that many bar employees and managers do not know their building's capacity limits, and the limits were not posted, so we can't expect enforcement from the bars. Here is the crime. These are the crime statistics in the same period of time, and you can see that as the number of bars has gone up, so has the percentage of crime in Encinitas. I'm sorry, there, it's going up. So that's according to Sandag. At the same time, here's the police budget. It stayed the same. So we're putting a greater burden on the police to try to do the same, to do a much greater job. So a year ago, we came to ask your help, and the citizens were instructed to meet with the downtown merchants, the sheriff, and the bars. Throughout the 3 general meetings and handful of subcommittee meetings, the bars did not offer any solutions, compromises, or offers to set up or observe responsible standards for alcohol beverage service, trash cleanup, or security, making it clear that they wouldn't take voluntary action. Only city officials, not the citizens, have the authority to set requirements the bars are obliged to follow. We ask our city to take action rather than ask citizens and bars to discuss the problems or ask citizens to conduct a neighborhood watch when the problems are occurring, which is in the middle of the night. The longer we delay, the more bars open every month, and the more the problem careens out of control. If we want to maintain the quality of life that makes this community so special, Encinitas can't afford to allow this trend to continue. Will all of those agree? Please stand. Thank you for your kind attention.
Martin Schechter, followed by John Balo, followed by Linda Houston, with a time donation by Janet Becker. Janet, are you here? Thank you.
Good evening, Martin Schechter, resident of Encinitas for over 35 years. Tonight, I would like to relate the story of a local business owner that reflects the feelings of many in our community. The story is from Dominic Alcorn, the owner and operator of the popular East Street Cafe for the past 5 years. Prior to that, he opened the 101 Diner in downtown Encinitas 25 years ago and ran that business for 20 years. Dominic's an honest, creative businessman who has made a positive contribution to the downtown Encinitas business district for more than 2 decades. Dominic loves Encinitas, yet he describes the troubles he has faced in recent years from people drinking in the downtown corridor. Difficulties have escalated to the point that he is considering moving his business from East Street to a more peaceful location outside of the downtown area. I quote his story. "Every morning I have to clean up beer bottles, trash, vomit, and urine from the sidewalk in front of my business. All the trash that is left from the night before is alcohol related. We are all disgusted along this street. The street lights are not working and it's pitch black at night. For that reason, it's inviting to go to the bathroom on the street, especially where there are alcoves. Some of my customers are afraid to come in at night. We're open until 10 p.m. because of the fighting and cussing that's going on outside. A lot of the people who have been drinking or doing heroin in the alley between 1st and 2nd Streets come in to use the bathroom here. I nicely ask them to move along. I've been swung at, spit on, cussed at, and hit below the belt. It turns ugly. Customers come to my protection, and they get hit. There have been fist fights. I call the police daily, sometimes up to 5 times a day. I love our community. I love the people. I have live music every night. We show the work of a different artist every month. There are a lot of artists in this community, and I want to promote them. But I can't do it unless the streets are clear, unless my customers can walk on clean sidewalks. My customers say they are afraid to come down here because of the kids and the vagrants. I want to continue my business, but I can't do it if it gets any worse. I have contemplated leaving if it persists, for my customers, for my employees, and for myself. I hate to say this, but we feel endangered. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Baylog. I lived here in the 80s, late 80s, or in the 90s. My father had actually a store on 101 that's no longer there. He moved out because basically a bar came in that time, and now it's actually expanded where his shop used to be. Then I came back after college, bought a house in Encinitas because I decided this was the perfect community to raise my kids in. The last 5 years, 8 years I've been here, it's just declining. I'm at a point now that this isn't the community I wanted to buy my house in. I'm contemplating moving because it's not what I chose to come here for. On 5/18 of 2012 at approximately 8:40 p.m., as I was spending time with my kids and my wife, around a corner came a car. I heard it coming. I knew it was going too fast. And next thing I know, 5 feet from my door is an upside-down SUV in my front yard, with my kids crying because they're scared out of their mind. They're little kids. And the first thing they see is somebody in their front yard upside down. As the driver came out, not to my liking, he got out. Oh, I'm fine. Don't call the police. Well, that's great, but it's going to happen. So essentially, he was DUI. He got arrested for drunk driving, charged with it, and, the story goes on. I spend 3 weeks trying to clean up my yard, make sure people don't steal stuff, because I have constant traffic. I live right here on D Street, right up the street here. And constantly, there's bottles thrown on the street. There's urination. I go for runs in the middle of the night. I don't even feel safe anymore. And I'm at a point now, I don't want my kids growing up in this type of environment. We shouldn't have to be worried about our kids. I have little kids. Like someone else had said, what's going to happen when they're teenagers? What, am I supposed to walk with my kids everywhere? It's not safe to go down these streets anymore. I'm constantly harassed when I go for runs, people saying stuff to me, just wanting to get into it, and that's not appropriate. That's not what Encinitas is supposed to be. That's not what I bought a house here for. This street also is a cut-through. It's a known fact. It's a cut-through to get away from the checkpoints. You see it constantly. If you go at midnight to 3 in the morning, constant traffic. They're not going to work. Also, I talk to our babysitters. I ask them, hey, where's the new place to go? I'm old. I'm in my 40s. Encinitas is a new PB. It's where to go. Let's go hang out in Encinitas. And she doesn't even do that stuff, but that's what she knows. That's in the communities. And again, I'm afraid for my kids growing up in this community. And I'm afraid what could happen next time somebody gets into it, just because I'm trying to take a nice walk on 101 where it used to be a nice community. It's not like that anymore. It's disappointing that this is what it's become. And at this point, more people should start moving out.
Linda Houston, Nasima Agarwal, and then Nancy Logan.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and City Council members, residents. First, I have to say I honor your focus and your concentration through all of this. It's a very interesting evening. My name is Linda Houston, and I've lived in Encinitas since before it was a city. I'm a homeowner here. I've raised my 2 daughters here, and we consider this to be our hometown. My granddaughter is going into 1st grade here, so I'm standing here tonight representing 3 generations of Encinitas residents. In addition, I've been a teacher in Encinitas for 20 years, very proudly employed by the San Diego Union High School District. So as a parent, as an educator, as a homeowner, I have a very sincere interest in building a healthy future for the children and families of this community, as I'm sure you do too. I would like to say a few words about reputation. We all know the indisputable fact that a good reputation is a hard-won treasure, and that once lost, it is very hard to regain. And it requires thoughtful behavior to maintain a good reputation. Encinitas has had a good reputation as a surfing center, a flower capital, a spiritual pilgrimage destination, and the home to more yoga studios than we can keep track of. Encinitas is known for having one of the best YMCAs in the nation. It has an incredible skate park, beautiful historic botanical gardens, awesome beaches, an amazing library, and very high-quality public schools. I'm pleased to say that we in Encinitas, in our schools, have some of the highest API, that's Academic Performance Index scores, of any area in the state of California. Many families of students I teach have moved to Encinitas from nearby or from far away, based solely on the reputation of our schools. Realtors promote this reputation as a big selling point in trying to draw families and sell them homes in this area. We know all of this, but I'd like to ask you to consider what is happening to our reputation and who will be responsible for that. I ask you, is it likely that a family would decide to move into a community known as a party town? Would parents want their children strolling the streets where party buses from other communities arrive loaded with people who just want to get loaded? Should our young surfers and skaters have to see the unsavory remains of drunken adult behavior in the morning streets, as I have witnessed in recent months? Would locals be proud to claim Encinitas as their hometown when people hear the number of DUI arrests is climbing and the number of bars blaring music until 2 a.m. may be growing at 10% per year? Now, with deep gratitude to our sheriffs for their efforts to keep our city safe and clean, I pose the question, what is happening to the reputation of our city? I recently heard someone say, I don't live in Encinitas, I only come here to drink. Does the City Council consider the reputation of our community when granting yet another alcohol permit? Of course, we love to see the Woodies and the classic cars displayed on our city streets. It's part of our culture. But who would ever brag about how many bars their town has? In conclusion, a little anecdote. My daughter attended UC Santa Barbara in the 1990s, and people continually asked her what it was like to go to such a party school. This perception was based on a reputation from the 1960s, and even though the university had raised admission standards, added exemplary programs, and been home to 2 Nobel laureates, it took decades to overcome a bad reputation. And thus I urge you to consider the reputation of our beautiful city and the long-term damage that can be done to it by decisions that are made here today. Will the reputation of Encinitas be based on the API or the DUI? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nasima Agarwal, and I live here and work here in the downtown community. And I'm speaking because this incident just happened yesterday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I have all the same complaints as all my neighbors here. But yesterday at 2 o'clock, I heard a very, very loud sound. And I thought maybe 3 or 4 cars had collided. But when I looked out the window, my client who was waiting to come in, she had gotten out of her car. A drunk driver hit her, and there was no brakes. We didn't hear any sound of any brakes, and his car was totaled. and she was driving a large Mercedes, like a 500, and she had parallel parked it by the time she was waiting to come in, and the impact of the car totaled the front of the man's car and pushed her car into the curb so that it was no longer parallel, it was like off to the side, and totaled the back of her car, and luckily she hadn't gotten out of the car yet. And so she said to him, "What were you thinking? What were you thinking?" Obviously, a natural response for someone who's just been hit. And he says, "Oh, I just had too much to drink. I'm drunk." He staggers out of the car. 2 cop cars came. One of the sheriffs on the motorcycle came. The paramedics came to check out the client, while the man laid on the grass listening to his iPod and texting. And he said to the sheriff who finally had him stand up so they could do the field sobriety test, that he was not only drunk and driving, that's why there was no brakes, but he was texting drunk and driving. So I don't know what kind of a ticket that involves. I think $500 is nothing. That person should not be out there. So my client naturally does not feel safe parking there. I certainly do not feel safe. This was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we have skaters, we have, and perhaps, maybe you guys hear so many of these stories that you just become numb to it. But for us that have to live with this day after day, we don't get numb to it. It's not like finding a broken glass bottle on Tuesday makes you feel any better than, Monday. It's ongoing. And perhaps a year has not meant a lot to people who are not in this community, but to us who are doing this day after day after day after day, and now our safety is being impacted. I think we as a people are the only people that voluntarily invite an element into our community that is harmful to our own selves. So I urge you to hear us and take some action immediately.
Good evening, Nancy Logan with San Diego Alliance and a 27-year resident of Encinitas, not downtown Encinitas, but Encinitas. I have a whole speech here prepared, but you know what? You've heard so much. We obviously know there's a problem. This poor gentleman, what if his kids were outside playing that night when the drunk driver overturned his car? As Captain Haley said earlier, one of his deputies was awarded he received an award in Sacramento. I believe it's 3 consecutive years for having the most driving under the influence arrests. Well, he is here tonight. Deputy David Toner, please stand up. You know, it's a very esteemed and honorable award, and I'm so glad he's out there doing it. But it's not something the city of Encinitas should be proud of. Drinking and driving is a subject I'm very, very passionate about. Not in this city, but in another city many years ago. My husband, my 1-year-old baby, and myself were driving down the street when a drunk driver hit us going 100 miles an hour. And my 30-year-old husband was killed instantly. I was unable to attend his funeral because I was laying in intensive care, and our 1-year-old baby was left without a daddy. I was a widow at 27 years old. So, drinking and driving is a preventable crime. Research shows that 50% of drinking drivers started their drinking journey at a licensed establishment. So please take action. Thank you very much.
The following 3 speakers: Shirley Finch with a time donation by Karen Rosalie. Karen are here. And Mary Jeffers. Mary, thank you. Followed by Marcy Beckett with time donations by Rita Detweiler. Thank you. And Candace Kamada. I saw Candace. There you are. And then followed by Jerry Hall with time donation by C.J. Minster. See C.J. And Alana Cohen. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Barth, City Council members. You've heard a lot. There's no question. I don't think anybody in this room, including those who own a bar or a restaurant, will take issue with the problem. I wanted to go through some of the, what'll I say, you might call it Band-Aid attempts that have been made. I find, as a resident of downtown area, I live at 3rd and I, no problem with what DEMA has tried to do. She gave a very good report, made every effort to solve the problem. They are not in a position to do so. Communication was key, hasn't helped. You've heard that nothing has changed. In fact, people are saying they feel it's worse. So the previous attempts, while they were well-founded, well-meaning, I think we just have to cross them off the list. The residents obviously value the character of their community. Those who've spoken here have cited so many incidents. Friends of mine said they'd gone on a vacation in Hawaii. They happened to tell some people they met there, they didn't know these people, that they lived in Encinitas. You mean you live in that party town? Hawaii. I mean, it's getting worldwide, our reputation. 1 year ago, I asked for when I was here before you, I asked for a 30% reduction in the crime. You've heard that it's gone up 22%. Now, I'm not a fan of statistics, and I'll tell you why. I experienced something that no statistic is going to make me feel any better. These incidents aren't changed by the statistics. If they go up or down, even if they went down, it doesn't change the problem. Again, DEMA's efforts, I laud them. I especially laud Captain Haley. He's come forth tonight with a lot of his own recommendations, a lot of things that he is initiating. It isn't his problem. He can't solve this. The Sheriff's Department cannot change people's behavior when they're inebriated. He can do so much. So we know that what we currently have tried isn't going to do it. That is very clear. ABC, when we were at these meetings with DEMA, very clearly came forth and said, the guidelines that we are regulated by, which I believe are regulated by the state, we're powerless. They're antiquated. They haven't been changed in so long. We can do nothing. Don't even look to us. Don't even think about it. Improper behavior of people, we can't change ourselves. It's a big job. We're certainly not going to change inebriated people. So the problem may not be totally with the people who are drunk. We're making it too easy for people to come here and have experiences that create behavior in them that they wouldn't normally do. We're just making it much too easy. Before people get a cab, we talked about how they see so many cabs coming into our neighborhoods. Well, what are they doing before they get into that cab? Are they in the streets for a time? We hear, I'm awakened at 2, 3 in the morning, people yelling, screaming. Okay, you'll say, well, is that so bad? Well, it's not the least of what they're doing. Why do we have to be subject to this all the time? Not working. I also am very pleased with what the director of our planning, Jeff, has stated in his report. Again, I find no fault in anybody's efforts or in your efforts, other than we'd like something to happen a lot sooner than a year. We've waited already. But we see that it's going to take a lot more. I feel personally that if it's going to take, what did Jeff say, could take up to 3 years to change the ordinances. Okay, if we have as many as my statistics may not be exact, but it'll give you a picture. If there's now 18 restaurants that have licenses that could be taken over, transferred, and they turned into a late-night bar, that it would add 18 to what we've already got. The city currently is powerless to do anything about that, the way the laws are today. So what I, and I think everybody seated in this room, wants to see is that change. Don't try to change it with talking and communicating. Don't try to change it with putting more policemen out. That isn't going to do it. It's only going to cost money. But if we have something that can stop this out-of-control train that's racing down the track and no one steering, that would make a difference. Now, I feel also that I want to say that seems like there's many ways to go about this. There's a watered-down deemed ordinance that could be initiated. When I say watered down, I mean kind of skirts around the issue a little bit and, well, we've done something. I'm not saying that's what you're going to do or even that you would consider, but I would encourage having a very well thought through preventative type of deemed ordinance, as Jeff mentioned, something that will change the laws to give you the control to regulate what is happening here with these potential 18 more turning into bars. That would be a very strong recommendation on my part. Complaints and hearings are laborious. If it takes 3 years just to get a deemed approved, and then even if you have something in place, some legislation, and it's going to take meetings, hearings, costing money, paying someone to do all this, where are we? Maybe we haven't gained much after all. You've gone through all this, all these people concerned, and maybe not a lot is going to result from it. So how do you, and hopefully staff, not hopefully, but I'm sure they will, come forward with strong enough language in whatever they're going to propose that it isn't going to be shot down the moment you try to get into correcting the problem. So very strong legislation. Emergency ordinance, nothing was mentioned. How do you, if it takes 3 years, what are you going to do now? Why not something in place as an emergency ordinance so that you have time and staff has time to really look at this and say, we all agree there's a problem. What are we going to do about it? And how are we going to prevent future hearings, costs, etc., keep the money from going out to correct if you've got the right language in these ordinances. So, strong recommendation to consider an emergency ordinance to stop a new, not the existing, this doesn't affect the existing people, new people from coming in, taking over a little corner restaurant and turning it into a late night bar until you have time to really get into this. Deemed approved, for sure. Absolutely, no question. So 1, emergency ordinance. 2, a deemed approved. 3, Captain Haley mentioned it, place of last drink. Maybe you want to start honing in on, okay, is it all from 1 or 2 places? Let's not, say that there's a couple of rotten apples in the barrel. Not all of them are a problem. Which ones are, and don't you want to know who those are and what they're doing? Maintenance fee. There is, I understand some of the cities who have dealt with this, and certainly a lot of money can be saved, I've got 3 seconds, by not having to spend a lot to follow what other cities have been doing. Thank you for your time and attention.
Marcy Beckett, followed by Jerry Hall, followed by Dennis Holtz with time donation by Teresa Verant. Are you here? And Roberta Frank, are you
PowerPoint.
here? Thank you.
I have a PowerPoint somewhere. Oh, what do I do? It's not on here. I'm Marcy Beckett. I am a lifelong resident of Pacific Beach, and it's been great to listen to you guys tonight. You are so far ahead of where we were 10 years ago. I'm a former member of the Pacific Beach Planning Group, and when I was on the planning group, we spent a couple of years researching and writing reports on these issues, and I just wanted to share some of what we found with you. We have high crime just in our main business district. Our alcohol crime is 19 times the city average, general crime 5 times the city average, and we have a lot of quality of life issues that you've mentioned here tonight. That business district has 9 bars, 44 restaurants, and 11 stores. That's 64, where only 10 should be allowed by state guidelines. So the take-home message from that is that, and you've already realized this, ABC regulations cannot protect you. They will continue to allow licenses even in high crime and over-concentrated areas. And the other message that you've already gotten very strongly, which is that we can't feel safe about restaurants because restaurants can act like bars. And that's what's happened in PB. We don't really have that many bars, but we have a lot of restaurants that act like bars. We looked at the concentration of alcohol licenses, and you see the top map. The darker the color, the higher the concentration. And we compared that to the concentration of alcohol crime in our census tracts, and we found that there was definitely a close association. The more licenses in an area, the more crime. We looked in our residential census tracts that have no alcohol licenses, and we found very low crime, much less than the city average. These are some of our census tracts with alcohol licenses, and they all, from 2008 to 12, we wanted to look at if it was changing. It was held fairly steady. They all had high crime, way higher than the city average. General crime, same thing. So there's definitely a relationship we can see in our community between alcohol licenses in areas and crime. There's also, beyond the statistics, and some have talked about it tonight, DUIs kill people. We have had 7 people killed from 2006 to 2007 by drunk drivers in PB. We found that the highest incidence of DUI was between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., and in 2009 there were 591 DUIs in our zip code, and 3/4 of those were people that don't live in our zip code. So they're driving out to all the other communities and putting everyone at risk, and I think you've understood that as well. The research very consistently shows that the more stores, bars, and restaurants selling alcohol, the more crime and violent assaults, the more DUIs, the more pedestrian injuries because they're getting hit by the DUIs, etc. ABC, well, enforcement cannot do it alone. ABC doesn't have the staff. They've got 4 officers, field officers for 3,500 licenses. Our San Diego Police Department has devoted tremendous resources to our community. It drains resources from other communities, which is unfair to them, but crime is still unacceptably high. So what happened in PB? It's what you guys have been describing here tonight. Restaurants that 30 years ago served beer and wine with meals, had a capacity for maybe 50 to 100 people, closed at 10, have been replaced by restaurants that have expanded their capacity. We have several establishments that are 800, now at 800 people. So they might have served 100 people 30 years ago. They serve 800 now. And they're serving full spirits until 2 a.m. So you can imagine the change in the impact. Same license, old restaurant license, no conditions, but now it's got an 8 or 10 times of the impact on crime and quality of life issues. The business practices they follow encourage excessive alcohol consumption and drunkenness, large unruly crowds, leading to the crime and the quality of life problems. So you've heard about morphing. That's what we're talking about here. ABC cannot prevent this. Their regulations just do not cover it. These are some examples in PB of our restaurants that have morphed over time. There's a lot more than this. We all want good restaurants to come and be able to serve alcohol and be successful, but under current ABC policies, you just can't control what happens, and they can turn into problematic operations. So we looked at the ABC policies very extensively, and they are very deficient. They cannot protect us. So cities cannot rely on ABC alone, or they're going to experience what we have experienced and what you guys are experiencing. Freed Whitman, an expert in this field, released a paper in 2012 that corroborates all that we've found and that you guys have found, and it is endorsed by the California ABC, and you guys have a copy of it. So it talks about morphing, a small number of outlets create a disproportionate share of police events, and you need to look at your police events by location, by time of day of the week, and find out where your problem operators are. That's one thing, the first thing you can do. It's pervasive around the state. It's not just in our communities. It tends to spread because the bad operators who are making a ton of money with these practices are putting pressure on the good operators to behave badly in order to compete. So it's going to get worse. ABC regulations are no help. Enforcement can't do it. ABC actually relies on and encourages cities to use land use policies to control these problems. You guys have some land use policies, that's great, but you need to strengthen them, and there are plenty of models out there that you can look at. If you have those land use policies in place, ABC will abide by them. So you'll be able to take control. So we'll talk about some of the tools. Over half of the cities in California have adopted CUPs to handle some of these problems. And San Luis Obispo, some people have talked about that as a good model. We have conditional use permits that are similar to your major and minor use permits, but a bit stronger. So those are a good thing to consider. The deemed approved ordinance you've talked about is a wonderful thing because it affects the CUP only affects the new licenses and expanded licenses, but the deemed approved can actually bring the existing businesses up to good operating practices. It basically, in other jurisdictions, they find that the operators just shape up. They have to. And it levels the playing field so everybody is on an equal footing, and that's a good thing. Responsible beverage service training, and then a dedicated police officer where the alcohol license businesses pay a sliding scale fee, cost recovery fee to fund a police officer to manage, monitor, and enforce. These are some of the other communities. There are many more than this that have adopted these policies. Ventura adopted their policies and found they got a 62% drop in arrests, a 42% drop in calls for service, and a 31% drop in DUI-related crashes. Their dedicated police officer oversees 300 alcohol licenses, but if you have less than that, if you have 100, I would presume that you could have a dedicated police officer part-time and you wouldn't have to pay as much. They oversee licensing and setting conditions, inspections, education of businesses and public, enforcement at all levels, training other police officers, and overseeing the entertainment permits. Right now, the police officer on the beat, the sheriff on the beat, probably has no clue what the entertainment permit conditions are, what the license conditions are, etc. They have a matrix for the alcohol use fee, and just to give you an example, a low-risk business that closes by 10 and purchases $50,000 worth of wholesale alcohol a year would pay $250 a year. A high-risk business on the other end of the spectrum that stays open past midnight and purchases over $100,000 of alcohol a year would have a $1,400 annual fee. And Ventura's dedicated police officer costs them $187,000, but the revenue they bring in there from their alcohol use fees is about $173,000. Thank you for your time.
Hello, Mayor and Council members. My name is Jerry Hall. I'm from Pacific Beach as well, which I'm actually ashamed to say in a lot of ways because I've lived there 23 years, grew up in Ann Arbor in a college town and moved to Pacific Beach. And I really love the community, but since about 1995, things have just changed dramatically, and I really believe what you're seeing now is what we were seeing in the late 90s and the early 2000s, and we did not act as strongly until about the last 8 or 9 years. And it's taken that long to get as far as we have been, and it isn't that great yet. So I wanted to give you a little perspective for the ABC. First off, the ABCs, in the last 10 years, I went in, you cannot find this information anywhere, so I went and got all the last 15 years of annual reports from the ABC and compiled them all, and have seen that licensing has gone up over 14% over the last 10 years. Licensing revenue has gone up 14% as well, but ABC staffing is down by about 8%. About 11,000 licenses were applied for last year, and 7 were denied. The ABC works to, it's funded, about 50% of its funds are supposed to be attributed to enforcement, but as you can see on the next slide, the ABC enforcement actions are down 24% over 10 years ago. Even though they have 14% more licenses, they're down 24%. Joint actions with the sheriffs and the local police are down 82%, and all told over California, it's a 42% decline. The enforcement outcomes have also dropped significantly as well. So the last one I'd like to say first, the warning letters. All they have to do is type a warning letter, and it's down 30%. Accusations are down 5%. Those are actual, they call accusations. It's largely a violation or a citation. Arrests are down 42% and investigations down. Most licensees, if they ever do get caught, or, the odds of I believe it's Encinitas is once every 70 years, but the odds of a ABC licensee getting a citation here is about every 70 years. In San Diego, it's about every 60 years. Once you do get that citation, you can pay $3,000 and have it wiped away, and then you wait another 60 years, I suppose. So it's the ABC enforcement is just ineffective right now. San Diego State did a study that was funded by the National Institute of Health, and to measure how bars and restaurants are doing with the training that they've gotten. So about 98% of the bar staff have been trained to serve properly. So a typical woman patron, we've all seen these BAC charts. A highly trained server is trained to serve a typical woman about 1 drink an hour. In fact, 90% of the highly trained staff served 8 drinks to women patrons in under 50 minutes, over 90% of the time. So what you have is basically a system where the bars and restaurants are saying they're doing everything they can. The community's coming in and saying they're trying to talk to the bars and restaurants. The sheriff is coming in saying we're doing everything we can to work with them and train them. And they're even following an RBSS program voluntarily. 98% are following it. But they're giving an average-sized woman, this is equivalent to 2 Long Island iced teas, a shot of vodka, and a glass of beer. They did that 90% of the time. The city of Fullerton did a study that I would really encourage you to do. Is what they did is they have a high concentration of bars and restaurants, about 49, some that don't even sell alcohol. But what they were realizing is the density of those outlets was causing problems. So they decided to look at the development costs, the cleanup costs, and then the public safety. So what I did is I just took out public safety, and I cited the report below. They found that they're spending about $1.14 million in public safety costs, and after the sales tax revenue of $400,000 from all those bars and restaurants, it was costing the city about a net of $750,000. So about $15,000 is what taxpayers are paying a bar and restaurant on average to be in business in their city, which just doesn't make sense. We have a restaurant in Pacific Beach that was actually just closed for not serving food. They haven't been serving food for years, and somebody filed a complaint with the ABC. After 18 months, the ABC still had not gone and looked at the establishment, and the complaint was filed again. And they went down and actually found they didn't serve food, and the restaurateur even put a sign in the window saying, "This is why we didn't sell food. It just doesn't follow a good business model." And so the ABC decided to punish us, and we're going to remodel during that period, and we're going to put in a new beverage mixing system. And by the way, the ABC let us decide when to close, so we're going to close from Monday to next Friday, and which means they only closed for 3 days. And rather than pay the $3,000, they just closed on a mid-May day. And on top of it all, instead of, the bar was, or the restaurant, was supposed to be serving 50-50 food and alcohol. So the ABC had no idea they weren't serving food. The local police also had a condition that they were supposed to serve food, including full entrees, in their conditions. And neither organization, and I have all the regard in the world for both organizations as law enforcement organizations, but it's clearly there just hasn't been enough attention by either organization to listen to the communities, and when the state has pulled back all their enforcement, it really has caused a lot of negative effects. So let me go one more slide. Considering industry self-policing is like parents asking their 12-year-old if they think they need a babysitter. Of course the kid is going to say, of course, no, Mom, I'm fine. And I was that 12-year-old, so I could give a convincing story. But, the truth is that I was a much better kid and a much better neighbor by having a babysitter. The ABC was put in place in 1955, I believe it was, because the State Board of Equalization had become so corrupt, they needed another organization to manage the alcohol licenses. So they put together an organization that would handle the licensing and the enforcement. So that's about 65 years ago, and we're still using the same ABC Act they drew up then. It's antiquated. It's not meeting the community's needs, and there's a lot of opportunity for you to act. I'm worried that, I'm glad you brought up the emergency action. I believe you have all the power in the world to create a moratorium, to just stop the licensing for now, because I believe you have 9 or 10 new licenses in process. And, when a bar in PB opens up, we had a little Mexican restaurant, they had a little cooler and beer, and now it's a full-blown bar. It's like 2,500 square feet, all off of that same alcohol license that they had with that beer cooler. And that's happening here. So when establishment is considering doubling in size or tripling in size without a permit review, I'm really concerned for you that this is a train that's speeding down the tracks right now, and we have been through this, and it's pure hell. So I encourage you to act boldly. Thank you.
Dennis Holtz, followed by Barbara Gordon, followed by Jean Chapo.
Good evening, Dennis Holtz, City of Encinitas. I think the problem is well established. I think there's a lot of information, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time up here going over it. You've heard it all. I think the thing that we have to look at is what's next. Right now, and I was surprised by this, the red bar and the bar graphs showing the DUIs, because what it shows to me is that Encinitas is a DUI generator for this whole area. We're a nuisance. We're a nuisance, or more than a nuisance, to this area, and I mean the North County coastal area. We're producing a lot of drunk drivers. How many are not caught every night? If you have 1,500 bar stools and only 2 to 3% of the people are drunk enough to be not driving, and I dare say that's a low estimate, then you've got 100 drunks going out on the street every night. Every night. That's 3,000 a month, easy, and I'm sure it's higher than that. So if you catch 500 a year, what does that mean? It means that we're all risking our life every night on the streets, and it's time for something to be done. And when you look, even more importantly, if we're getting to solutions, okay, we have a conditional use permit ordinance in effect. We have a responsible beverage server ordinance in effect. The Union Bar came in, the Union, whatever it is, bar came in, it's a new one, came in under all of these ordinances. And if you look at the data on the DUIs, you'll see they were number 5 in 2011 in DUIs, reported arrests. They bumped all bars around them, not restaurants, but pure bars. Look at 2012. They're number 3 on the list. They even bumped their way up and knocked some of the bars down. So if our system was working, how would this be happening? It wouldn't. So what it means is what's in place today doesn't work, it's broken, and it needs to be fixed. A deemed approved ordinance. Why would you have a deemed approved ordinance? Because the way the city regulates now is on a case-by-case basis. It's as if you go down to get a driver's license and they don't tell you what the rules of the road are. They evaluate your driving and tell you what speed you can drive at, what roads you can drive on. But there's no overarching responsibility or law that affects everyone. And that's the way it's set up in Encinitas. Once you get your use permit, you're out of the picture. You're done. You got your license, you can go do what you want. Okay? And no one can say anything about it unless the sheriff goes in and makes an arrest for something going on. But there are no uniform rules or standards that apply across the board to all alcohol outlets. They're just not there. That's what a deemed approved ordinance does. It sets up a rule of the road for everyone. Everyone plays by the same rules. You don't have the bad operators winning because they got in early on the lottery and got an alcohol license that doesn't have any conditions on it because they got here before the city even incorporated. They've got a 1923 license over at the saloon or whatever it is, and they don't have any conditions and they don't have to worry about it. Everybody plays by the same rules because you use deemed approved. Deemed approved, what does it mean? Everyone's assumed to be doing the right thing. So if people are doing the right thing, it won't affect their business at all. There will be no complaints from them. The only people that will be affected are those that aren't doing the right thing. But it's more than that. We need more than deemed approved. We need the matrix system that was put in place in Ventura, the risk system that you saw alluded to in one of the previous slideshows, with a fee structure. Why do we need that? Because it's what Councilmember Gaspar said about, do you fish off the dock or do you fish off the boat? Because right now we're fishing off the boat. You have cops chasing people around trying to figure out who's drunk and run them down. The way you do it is you set up a system and you put a police officer in charge on a daily basis working with the alcohol operators to make sure that they know someone's looking over their shoulder and they aren't going to get away with it. It's much more effective to catch it on the front end than it is to catch it on the back end. You can plow as many $1 million as you want into downtown and into our city and you'll never catch everybody. But if you set up a good system, you'll get the same kind of result, 62% result in arrests over 3 years in Ventura. For 100, what? After the fees, it costs the city about $13,000 a year to do that. Okay? So where are you going to put your money? Is it going to be effective, efficient, and smart use of money, or are you just going to pay the sheriffs and hope that somehow somebody gets caught? Finally, we get down to the moratorium issue. And Bill Weedman submitted some really important information. Nobody's in favor of shutting down commerce and shutting down business. We're all sitting here quaking on our boots. You know, the Chamber of Commerce will come in and say, you guys are anti-business. You're trying to shut down the business in Encinitas. It doesn't have to be that way. If you look at his proposal, you put in place an interim ordinance. That interim ordinance has the same conditions of what you're working toward, and you put a moratorium on. But anyone who wants to get around the moratorium simply agrees to those conditions up front, puts them in their license, and away they go. Okay? So what it allows is a way for things to happen so that commerce can continue, the right operators are in place, but the city knows who they are, puts conditions on it, and we get this thing under control. Because if you don't get it under control, as you've heard, we're already out of control. Something's got to happen. It's got to happen now. And I'm hoping that tonight you're going to take the steps to create everything necessary to have this work. And it just doesn't get punted down the road with, we'll do a study, and 2 or 3 years from now we'll come up with something. And in the interim, who knows what's going to happen. As you heard, there are 10 pending licenses, new licenses. Now, yes, you can regulate the new licenses, but just like Barracuda turning into Beer Garden, didn't go through a license, they just opened up. As long as they are taking an existing license and just changing the use, since the ABC codes from the 50s, when a bar was a bar and a restaurant was a restaurant, and they didn't have this thing called the morphing restaurant to bar, the ABC license, ABC doesn't even recognize it. They're just giving a license to a restaurant, you know, which in the 50s was go out with the kids and have some spaghetti for dinner, and that was it. So what happened is the times have changed, the laws haven't kept up, and you guys are now, as the council members, going to have to step into the void and fill it. And as was stated, ABC law invites your participation through the land use mechanism. It's in the Business and Professions Code. It's recognized that the city has this right to do this. There's no qualms about it. Oakland was the first city that tried it. And of course, the alcohol beverage distributors immediately brought a suit against them. You know, they pulled all their resources together and took them through the courts, and they lost. Oakland won. And ever since then, there's been no dispute about the fact. And that's why all the other cities you saw, the dozen or more that have put these laws in place, no one's ever challenged them. Why is that? Because everyone knows what the precedent is in the courts, and that's back from the 90s. So I think Bill Weedman's given you a roadmap and set forth what to do. And if there's any doubt, look at the data he has from Sandag. We are one of the smallest cities in the county, but we're in the top 3 or 4 for alcoholic beverage licenses. We're only behind the unincorporated county, the city of San Diego, and maybe one other city. We are an alcohol magnet center, and it's just been happening with pure inattention. And it's time for something to happen, and I'm begging, I'm pleading, I'm asking for your support to do it all tonight. And what that means is direct staff to come back with a deemed approved ordinance, what it would take to get a moratorium, an interim ordinance if necessary to keep things rolling in the in-betweens, and then to find out what will be done to set up some kind of risk management policy where the alcohol generators essentially fund, through a fee, our sheriff's department so they can do their job without having to pull people off of other areas, officers from other places to come downtown. Talk to people. If you want, I'll tell you what, on a night we don't announce it, let's go. I'll go downtown with you at 1 in the morning and let's take a walk and see what's going on. Patrol cars, both sides of the street. Drunk tests being performed. Lights flashing, another car rolling by, people screaming and yelling. You have no idea what's going on down there until you go down there and see. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Barbara Gordon, and alcohol licenses are issued by the state of California, as we've heard this evening. But when they issue the license, there is no educational or training requirements for that owner or manager or server that's going to be selling that alcohol. As you've talked about tonight, in 2009, you guys passed an RBSS ordinance, a responsible beverage sales and service. But research has shown that a comprehensive RBSS ordinance combined, and this is the key, combined with active enforcement can be an effective tool to reduce sales of reduce obviously intoxicated and underage customers. The license are required to attend in this city a training every 2 years. But if the management does not require the employees to practice what they learned at the class, there is no benefit. A trained server can identify those that are approaching high-risk intoxication. But if the management does not create a culture that allows that server to cut off that intoxicated customer, it doesn't do any good. It is the management responsibility to not allow those intoxicated to happen or to not allow them to leave their establishment without a cab or a designated driver. Cities need to play an important part in this thing. They need to communicate early, clearly, and often, and at every opportunity, the expectation that the applicant will serve alcohol responsibly. The cities expect the management of the alcohol establishment to create a culture where the staff is encouraged and recognized to serve alcohol responsibly. We need to have a partnership, again, with all the parties involved. I have a list here of all of the lead trainings that had happened. When we promised, when this ordinance was passed, that San Diego Alliance would sponsor all of these trainings, and so I'm going to pass out the list of all the trainings and how many people have taken those trainings since 2008. I also have with me, I'm going to pass out, there is an alcohol policy panel from its recognized by the county's binge and underage drinking. It's a group of very respected people in San Diego that have put together recommendations for cities. And what they recommended is stronger zoning ordinances need to be in place to reduce alcohol-related crimes. And it's what you have heard today. This is their recommendation. Conditional use permit, a deemed approved ordinance for the existing ones, to establish an RBSS, and also then to establish a fee that will be paid by the licensees on and off sale to that law enforcement. So I'm going to give you both of these. Thank you.
The final three speakers, Jean Chapo, Peter Norby, and Thomas Billick.
If somebody would make a motion to extend the meeting till 11 o'clock.
So moved.
I've got a motion by Kranz, second by Muir.
Good evening. My name is Gene Chapo, 624 Union
Hang
Street.
on, Gene. Hang on. We're voting on extending the meeting.
Excuse me.
All right. Thank you. Now you can go.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Gene Chapo, 624 Union Street, Encinitas. I've thought about this problem a lot, and we've had an awful lot of great speakers this evening that have brought a lot of good information. The lady who spoke from Pacific Beach really had some excellent points to make, and one of the points that she was making that was so good, I thought, was that one way to attack this, and one very good way to attack this, was through land use. In your land use ordinances, in our zoning ordinance, we don't really define, and other jurisdictions do, by the way, we don't really define what is a dining establishment and what is a drinking establishment. What's a bar and what's a restaurant? Now, everybody in this room can very clearly tell you which one is which. And I think that one thing we really should do is, within our zoning code, define what is a bar and what is a restaurant. Because a bar and a restaurant, as was pointed out by the lady from Pacific Beach, a bar has a much greater intensity in terms of parking requirements and other impacts that have to be dealt with. So when you're dealing with this morphing issue of a restaurant that all of a sudden becomes a bar, if they can come up with all the new parking that they're going to be required, maybe we'll think about doing it. But I'm saying that it's not the same. And they have new impacts, and those new impacts should be dealt with. I think that also we're in a situation where we have a downtown that is way out of balance. When you get to a point where you've got 2 drinking establishments in every block, that's not a hometown. That's not a normal hometown. And I want to take my downtown back. I don't want to see a few people making loads of money on the backs of the citizens of the community. Now, just to get back to the parking thing real quick, the gentleman from Union, when he first came in for his approval, he wanted to use the vacant lot next to him also to serve alcohol in an open garden atmosphere, that kind of thing. But he wasn't able to do it because he didn't have the parking. So, and I hear that, of course, he's still continuing to try and find those extra parking places, because maybe we'll be able to do that at some point. But it just goes to show you that that is one element that we can use that will prohibit morphing, prohibit from going from a restaurant. If you can prove, the ABC has its rules about what they would consider a restaurant, what they would consider a bar, as well as the California Building Code. We also address it in a different way in terms of occupancy, in terms of exiting, the number of people and so forth. We look at bars differently than we look at restaurants. People sitting at a fixed table is a much different thing than people standing in a bar. And if you can raise those numbers tenfold, you've raised the impacts tenfold. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. My name is Peter Norby. I serve as your Highway 101 coordinator under contract with the city. I'd first like to disclose that I and all members of my family have either contracted with or are investors or owner of a brewery, so I need to disclose that to you. My tenure on Highway 101 starts in 1990. Shared a wall, business right next to Dennis and Dominic, the 101 Diner. My bakery was there. For 15 years of my life, I drove to work at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I can tell you it's an absolute horrendous scene commuting at 2 o'clock in the morning. whether it's 2%, 10%, 40, or 50%, there's a lot of drunk drivers on the road. I can also tell you what you heard from the public in terms of cleaning vomit. That was a weekly occurrence for either Dennis or Dominic and myself out in front of our stores. In the alleys, urine was daily. And Nancy Daly had to pay for a new storefront window for me about once a year as somebody was thrown through our storefront window. Your downtown is incredibly successful. It enjoys a good reputation. It's successful at all levels. Your retailers are successful, your personal services, professional services, your restaurants, and your bars. All of the other impacts are dealt with essentially during daylight hours or till 8 or 10 p.m., with the exception of your bars, with your exception of alcohol served after 10 p.m. That's an impact that goes into the neighborhood when the neighborhood essentially is sleeping. 7 years ago or 8 years ago, we were very concerned. I want to echo the brother from SRF's concern about balance. We were concerned about balance and losing our ground floor from going from retail going to office. So we designed and developed a ground floor retail ordinance to prevent the ground floor from going to office. A lot of communities had lost their core retailing and changed and morphed into offices and now currently have high vacancy rates. So that was not accepted by all. Some people thought we were limiting the property rights. Some people thought that we would have a lot of vacancies because a property owner couldn't lease out to whoever we want. But it kept our core commercial. So this, for me, this is really an issue of balance. I don't want to lose our bakeries, our delicatessens, our coffee shops, and have them all morph into bars and restaurants. Downtown, Honey's, SRF, Potato Shack, 101 Diner, Encinitas Cafe are all part of our East Street Cafe, are all part of our culture. And I can tell you as my disclosure, there's a lot of money in alcohol. Alcohol you make more money at in food. So I would urge this council to restore and to take care of the balance in downtown as a land use issue. Look at your specific plans. There are some allowances that we currently give that maybe we shouldn't give. Take the advice, if you will, or the direction of the services offered or remedies offered by your planning director. Listen to your community, but your downtown is precious, and an ounce of prevention or dealing with it before all the horses are out is better than dealing with it afterwards. Thank you.
Final speaker, Thomas Billick. Thomas Billick. Then we have no more speakers.
All right. Okay, we're going to have council discussion and Deputy Mayor.
Well, first of all, thank you to everyone from the public who's come out tonight and anybody who's gone home and maybe is watching on TV for caring and for taking the time and putting the effort into being here, and to the sheriff and the planning department. There's no question in my mind we have a problem. I wasn't on the council before. I was frustrated last year when this came up and the solution was to go talk. I thought something needed to be done then. And so it's certainly time to act now. So personally, I have 3 stepdaughters between the ages of 21 and 26. They are patrons of many of the establishments that have been mentioned here, directly or indirectly to my dismay. But anyway, hopefully they do act responsibly. I don't see any reason why bars need to be open past midnight, period. I think we need, so I've got a whole list of things I'd like to see us do. I'll throw them out here and then we'll get to actual motion making once I guess everybody has a chance to talk. But I would like to see a temporary moratorium while we figure out what else to do. I'd like to see us take some action on the party buses. It was mentioned in one of the original presentations, but no recommendations were made. But I'd like us to have restrictions on where they can park and that they can't idle and so on. I've been asking since I got elected for the council to be notified when there are license applications so that if we want to activate the community more broadly than the mandatory notices, we could do so, but I have yet to be notified of any new license applications. I would like to see that happen. I would like the the planning department to bring us back a recommendation for a deemed approved ordinance and including impact fees. But I want to correct something. I don't think that Mr. Murphy said it would take us 3 years to develop an ordinance. He was citing the experience in SLO. We're already more than a year into the process ourselves, and so I would like to see us have something back from the planning department, certainly before the end of this year, preferably maybe by September if that's not too ambitious. And I just wanted to recall that, was it last week or the week before when we did the community grant things, and we had this lovely young woman speaking about the school band programs and how music programs in the school increase property values. She was very articulate about this and explained why, because it raised test scores and test scores increase property values. It seems pretty clear to me that proliferation of bars does not increase property values, and so we really do need to do something about it. So those are my thoughts on it, and I look forward to hearing what the rest of the council has to say.
Councilman Muir?
Yeah, I appreciate everybody coming out here tonight. And a couple speakers talked about a fair and balanced approach, and that's what I've tried to do from the very beginning. I appreciate Lori, because it has been a year. In fact, I was one of the ones that asked for the groups to come together and build a collaboration of stakeholders to talk about some of the issues. And before we get to legislative fixes, let's see if we can do some of the smaller things. And you've done that. I appreciate that. But I think we're at a point now we need to look at some legislative fixes. So... And I've heard a lot of good things out there today. I've heard about conditions, operational management plans. I like that. Land use definitions and some of the things the deputy mayor has brought up. So I'm looking forward to solving the problem and not delaying it. So, and I encourage the dialogue between and Dodie. I appreciate DEMA for facilitating those meetings. I think that should keep going. I think that needs to be an ongoing process. The dialogue between the balance of because we are looking for a healthy business environment and a quality of life issue downtown. So I encourage the stakeholders to continue that relationship, that dialogue, so we can deal with these issues as we move forward. But I'm also looking from the staff as it relates to tools that we have legislatively to address some of these issues, and not jump way over here, but maybe a phased-in approach. So I want to hear what options are available for us to use for tools to correct some of these issues.
Councilman Krantz?
Yes, indeed, we do have a problem. So, I appreciate all the input. I think that Director Murphy has laid out some good approaches here, short-term, long-term, and medium-term. I was a little surprised that we didn't hear from any of the bar owners tonight, and to understand better from their perspective how they might address these issues. The idea of downtown residents and other non-alcohol business owners having to clean up messes left over from the night before, it seems to me there should be some fairly simple solutions worked out with DEMA and those merchants to address that particular issue, because I don't think anybody should have to deal with that kind of mess on a regular basis. The other thing that we found out tonight is that, while we were addressing this from the standpoint of the downtown, we are developing a pretty robust business in alcohol in Leucadia as well. So we need to make sure that whatever we do also reaches up north. And as Peter Norby mentioned, the specific plans might be one way to do that with both the downtown and the North 101 specific plans. But I agree it's time to start taking some action, and I think that these ideas here, the deemed approved, is probably where we're going to head. And the other thing that I would prefer to do instead of a moratorium would be to look at the idea of any alcohol permitting. Minor use or major use permits would come to the council for a time being, as opposed to moratoriums, and so we could have an opportunity as a council to speak to those issues. So, but I agree it's time to get this thing going. Thanks.
Councilwoman Gaspar?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you to all that participated this evening. Appreciate your input. And I hear you loud and clear on the quality of life issues that you're facing. And do believe that it is our job to make sure that we do strike a balance in our communities. The things that I have, some of the things that I've heard tonight, I can support from my colleagues. Some I probably won't support long term. But I will say that what hasn't been mentioned, that was mentioned briefly by Councilmember Kranz, were the land use issues that are involved. And there are things that we absolutely can do right now that can help out a lot. It was presented pretty early in the evening by our planning director. The alcohol use is requiring a major use permit sent to the Planning Commission and not lying in the hands of our directors. That's something that we can do. Simply, all new uses requiring a major use permit referred to the Planning Commission or the City Council. That's something that absolutely we can do, because then we can sit and have that public hearing and learn more about the intended use of that restaurant or bar before a decision is made. And that's something that's really important. And those things are going to address new issues coming into the neighborhoods, but it certainly is not going to address what you're experiencing today. So there are things that we need to do to address the issues that you're experiencing today and get things back into a manageable condition that serves everyone well. So I hear you loud and clear, and I'm very supportive of taking action that helps you now with the situation, but helps into the future as well.
Thanks. And I'd like to weigh in before we start the second round. I absolutely concur. I mean, it's very frustrating. I live in Cardiff. I've seen my neighborhood change because of some of the restaurants changed in that community as well. So I totally understand what you refer to. We have, the motorcycles running up the hill, Birmingham, Chesterfield at 2 in the morning. So you don't even have to be close to some of those people. But the Restaurant Row area has some lively drinking establishments, shall we say. And so this has to be citywide. All we would do is, if we made it to the specific plans, would be to push it somewhere else. And you don't like it in your neighborhood. I know you don't want to push it to somebody else's. So this has to be citywide for it to be effective, for you just not to push the problem to somebody else's neighborhood. So whatever we do is, in fact, in my opinion, has to be citywide. I absolutely agree with the fees, I like to call it the Ventura approach, because I think that those who are causing the impact and causing the cost should pay for the cost and not the rest of the neighbors. I think it's really unfair to expect you to have a neighborhood watch program to take care of this. That's ridiculous. I mean, you shouldn't have to be doing that. I certainly support establishing a midnight closing as well on our for our future policies. I remember Captain Sorrow, one day we were talking about this issue because she really started the charge of trying to clean things up downtown, and she said nothing good ever happens after midnight, and I think that's true then, it's true now. I do support a moratorium. I do believe we need some breathing room, absolutely. A moratorium does require a 4/5 supermajority vote from the council, so that is something that we will need to talk about and perhaps get some direction and advice from our city attorney, and a few ideas also from our director of planning as to whether that's something that could be adopted tonight or whether that is something that we have to have a greater discussion on. And so if you could weigh in on that for me.
The moratorium could not be adopted tonight. It's going to have to come back in an ordinance form with very specific findings. The government code section, for everyone's knowledge, is government code section 65858 that speaks to a stopgap for purposes of studying a zoning proposal or some new regulations. It's a 4/5 vote, as the mayor said. It's for 45 days initially. It can then be extended for 10 months and 15 days as part of the second extension, and the final extension under the statute is for an additional year for a total of 2 years. Also, it has urgency effect, so it once adopted, it takes effect immediately.
Thank you very much. Councilman Muir.
Actually, I was just going to ask for the attorney's perspective on the legal aspect of moratoriums. That question was answered.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Okay, so let's get going here. It's late. I would like to move that we direct staff to bring back a moratorium ordinance for our consideration and vote at the earliest possible meeting, which I guess would be July 10th or whatever the earliest time is that they could do that.
The 10th or the 17th.
Okay, so that's my motion.
And I will second that. Oops. Wait. Do I need some clarification on that?
We do need to know if you're asking for the 10th or as earliest as we can bring it back. And I'm just wondering what else are you going to frame for us so we can organize ourselves on bringing it back to you as soon as possible?
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of different things that we may not, some we may agree on and some we may not. So it seemed like rather than bundling them all into one motion, we should sort of take them one at a time. I'd like to see it at the earliest possible time. I don't have a magic window to know if you can do that by July 10th or not.
That's a good suggestion. I think the staff and I certainly get your message. We want to do a good job on it. We want something that's going to be in place for a while.
Okay. Councilman Muir?
Yes, I would ask that the staff brings back more than just that, because we need a list of things and look through them, not just the moratorium issue, but all the issues that were brought up and some of those solutions that maybe we can look at as a group and just pick the ones we like kind of deal. I think we already have consensus, seems like it, on a lot of the issues, at least to bring information back to us.
Correct. I think if I'm understanding this correctly, the motion, the deputy mayor suggested that we actually, bifurcate some of this, some of these issues, such as the moratorium, bring back additional information of what a deemed ordinance would contain, including the hours of operation, things like that. But doing this in separate motions so that we can agree or disagree on some of this.
I think we bring it all back and disagree or agree when it comes back.
I'll let the...
Well, we need to be specific about what we're asking for. If you want a more complex motion, I can amend my motion to say, and bring back an ordinance that, for our consideration, that would limit the closing time or the time of operation to midnight, that would restrict party bus operation. We can make a whole list of all of them, but I don't know that everybody agrees on all of them, so I thought it would make more sense to see where there was agreement or not. But I'll bundle them all together, and then you can start pulling them apart if you think that works better. Is that what you want? Okay, you want me to give the whole list in one motion, or?
What we're looking for. Yep. Go ahead.
Just a recommendation. There's a lot of great stuff here that we want to do right for you, and a lot of stuff that we need to research and understand much better than we do tonight. I think it makes sense for you to frame for us all the things that you're interested in, and then I could commit to you either July 10th or 17th to be a whole lot smarter. How long will it take to implement? What does it take? What are the resource issues, right? And from there, you could tell them, okay, we want this, this, and this by the dates where it can be done. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're going to set the bar really high on getting you, finished products on the 10th or 17th and not be ready to do that.
Well, I don't think they all have equal urgency, and so I'm reluctant to bundle it all together and then have it take more time to do anything, because the longest time, the thing that takes the longest will drag down everything else. So I think I would prefer to let's vote on the motion that I made and that was seconded, and then if somebody else wants to make a motion to study a bunch of other stuff or give other direction, then we can see where that takes us.
Okay, Councilman Kranz?
Yeah, so the moratorium is clearly the most important, but there's, if we're giving staff direction, I think it's been pretty clear. They took a good shot at what I think is direction here in this short, medium, and long term. Now we need to put some more detail into that, and some of it is requiring legislative action, so there'll be ordinances and things like that. But clearly, if there's going to be a moratorium, that would be the first one to come back. So, I don't think that bundling them all together here is a problem, knowing that they will come back as they're ready to be presented to the council for deliberation and enactment with whatever necessary resolutions and other things.
Well, I concur with the deputy mayor. The moratorium is the most critical component to this because it would sort of freeze us in time to give the staff the ability to write these documents or to bring forward to us those things that we are going to talk about line by line by line. So those may not happen as quickly, but they can. But we need to have this time out so that they can happen without all of this other stuff slipping in while we're fiddling with the rest of the ordinance. So, I mean, that's why I just feel it's critical that we have the motion to bring back a moratorium July 10th or 17th, whichever, as soon as they can. There is a draft recommended moratorium in our staff report, and I think that's an excellent starting point, and there's no reason why. And we're not saying, if you vote yes tonight on this motion, you're not saying that you're going to vote for it later on. We are just making sure that there is firm direction that that is going to be brought to us for a vote.
Yeah, and I don't think it's that, critical. We can certainly vote it on two different things, so.
Yeah, not the only staff direction.
Exactly. And I think we're all saying the same thing. If you want to vote on, but I think there's other things we should bring back too.
Yes, I agree we vote because we owe the public this effort that we are taking them seriously. Because otherwise, it sounds like we're just trying to sweep it under the rug. So I know that we're concerned, but I also know that it took over a year to get this back to us already, and we don't have time to lose. We've already seen more bars. We've seen them expanding. We know that they're going to keep getting bigger, and this whole thing about morphine is at critical mass. So we have to get this under control now, or we're out of control. So that's just my point of view. So, you don't need, okay. Okay, so let's vote on the motion. We are going to bring back a moratorium either July the 10th or July the 17th.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right. So, of course, I do have to say that doesn't mean there's going to be a moratorium. We got that on the agenda as a standalone item. The rest of this we will be discussing. So, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, so if we look at page 15 of the staff report, which is the PowerPoint that says additional tools to investigate. I don't know what page of the PowerPoint that is, but it has land use permitting changes for a restaurant serving alcohol in late night hours, review legislative options used by other cities. The buffer zone between commercial and residential we haven't really talked about, and I don't know how practical that is given where things are. But anyway, parking restrictions and prohibiting idling of buses. I would like to move that we direct staff to bring us back actionable proposals on all of those points.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on that item. Is there anybody, any other council weighing in on that? So
I just wanted to say quickly, if we can find a way in that rubric to point out the timeline, like you mentioned before, what the action item is and what the cost is, and if there is a cost, if there is, some alternatives to how that's being paid for, or, some financial impact as well to either the city or to the business, that would be helpful.
the motion maker agree? Yeah, I think that is probably something we all need to know. All right, let's vote.
A motion carries unanimously.
Very good. All right, council, does anybody else want to weigh in on this item? Anything else that we may have missed?
I just want to say thank you for patience, a lot of patience out there.
Thank you. So that is, it's not the end of our meeting. We've still got 2 more items, but most of you get to go home now. Thank you. Yeah, right. You're welcome. Thank you. So we're going to take a 5-minute break and then come back for our last 2 items. We'll now go on to item 5, adoption of a resolution 2013-33 approving proposed fire department reorganization and staffing changes. And that will be our Fire Chief Daigle.
Good evening, Council. Mike Daigle, Encinitas Fire Department, along with Tom Gallup. And we're here tonight to present a proposal to reorganize the Fire Management Service Agreement. As you know, back in 2009, the City of Encinitas entered into an agreement with the City of Solana Beach, Del Mar, and also Rancho Santa Fe Fire District for a management service